Our very first presenter is from, wow, I'd like to welcome back Mandai Wildlife Group. They are a repeat customer of OIP. This is the third time they're back. And the challenge is titled Environment Aware AI-Enabled Automated Delivery System. I believe the problem statement is, right, how can we, as in the Mandai Wildlife Group, provide an environment-aware food delivery system, optimized meal deliveries for on-ground staff across the parks, right? And our first speaker is Mr. Lam Boon Soon. He's the Assistant Vice President of the Transformation Office of the Mandai Wildlife Group, and he has over 15 years of experience in leading and managing group-wide enterprise transformation portfolio and programs in both corporate and public sector environments. And wow, Boon Soon's area of specialization includes technology master planning, industry 4.0, future of work, and so on. So basically, he is the guy to go to for the future of technology, right? And I'm going to right now invite Boon Soon right now to start the presentation. Boon Soon, welcome. And
Hello,
please take it away. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Billy and fellow colleagues from IMDA as well as participants. Can I just check whether I should be sharing the slides or you'll be sharing on my behalf?
We can have it both ways. Boon Soon, we're here to serve you. So if you want to share, you can share now. We can also use the backup slide with us. Yeah.
Sure.
So just let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably in that case, you just share using your materials.
Okay, I'm going to invite my DJ friend, Mr. Bay, to start sharing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can we go into the full mode, please? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Boon Soon, representing Mandai Wildlife Group. Previously, we were actually known as Wildlife Reserve Singapore. We actually are the owner of the 4 parks that you are aware of: Singapore Zoo, previously called River Safari, Night Safari, and Jurong Bird Park. So we are also in the midst of building up our new precincts. So with that, we are actually going to have additional parks such as indoor attractions. Rainforest Park, Jurong is going to move over, and we are going to also operate together with Banyan Tree a wildlife themed resort. So in addition to that, there's also going to be conventionalized facilities. The land area that we will actually be expanding to is about 2 times of what we have currently, to up to about 120 hectares. Next slide, please. Just a little bit more on the company introduction. Yep. So I think we should be quite good about understanding what we do as a organization. So what I have here is that to actually give a little bit of context is that why are we having this problem statement? Next slide, please. Okay. For most of you who are actually based in Singapore, you will know that actually we operate, as I mentioned earlier, the Singapore Zoo, River Safari, and Night Safari. What happens is that as we start to operate the parks, we have our fellow colleagues who are actually serving the customers and as well as the animal care staff who actually takes care of the animals. So similarly, you will have actually colleagues who are actually on site every day, even probably dealing with F&B operations, retail operations, and as well as giving out probably animal shows as you all would actually typically like to attend. So what happens is that for us as staff, while we are actually doing the day-to-day operations, starting from morning 8 o'clock all the way up to the park closes, our lunchtime location, a little bit of trade secret is that for staff, when we actually have lunch, it's actually being served out at the kitchen and as well as staff canteen from Night Safari. So what happens is that, for example, if I am actually representing a retail shop, what I need to do is that, for a particular lunchtime afternoon, if I have 5 fellow colleagues in my retail shop that day, one of us will actually need to, either by roster or depending on who has got the driver's license, that we will need to actually then drive out from the retail shop whereby we are actually stationed at to the kitchen at Night Safari, using typically a buggy. What you actually see on the right hand side is actually a buggy. For the smaller version, we have the golf buggy, which is a 2-seater, and for the longer version, it's actually a 6-seater. It's about 4 meters long. Okay, so from now on, we will actually have one staff member to actually collect the lunch for the rest of the team members. So that thing itself actually gets replicated across the various teams. So you have one representative maybe from retail, one from the other outlets, such as the animal presentation, then your herbivore section will probably have another colleague, then your maintenance crew have another colleague, then maybe even the tram drivers itself will have another 1 to 2 more who actually go to the Night Safari every day to collect the lunch. So what happens is that they will need to step up, even though if it's a busy day, be it a public holiday or even a weekend, somebody need to collect lunch, right? So that's where I think that we feel that there could be opportunities for automation. And what happens? Okay, you may have raining in between. You need to actually wait. You need to, in addition to driving, you also need to, make sure that you are collecting the correct portions, number of packs of vegetarian food and actually number of packs of normal food. In addition to that, sometimes the cookhouse actually also gives out fruits as additional supplement for the staff meals. Okay, next slide, please. Just to cover a quick route. Okay, how we typically start the day is that depending on where you usually start with, a typical route, if you look at the S&E circle in red, okay, assuming that if you're actually starting from the point whereby the buggies is actually being parked, we have a central area whereby buggies are being parked and actually being charged because these are actually electric vehicles. Okay, then from there, the staff, assuming that he's at the gift shop at the Singapore Zoo entrance, he will need to go to the place whereby the vehicle is actually being parked, go and collect the buggy, go and drive to Night Safari along the one-way routes. That's point one. And then depending on the number of meals that he's collecting that day, then to collect the meals later, I'll give a little bit more of a description and picture illustration. So from then he will actually then move on to point number 2 to drop off the meals, number 3, number 4, number 5. Okay, over here you will see that the route is very linear. Why is that so? Because in the Singapore Zoo itself, we're actually operating a private road. It covers both front of house and back of house. Front of house means that you are actually going to have interaction with the guests. So for example, some of you may have actually visited Singapore Zoo and then you see, buggies actually being driven around and so on. So this is what we mean by front of house. Back of house means that it's our own internal route that's not accessible to the guests. So what happens is that the buggy actually needs to drive through both front of house and back of house roads. And the direction is as such being illustrated because all our roads is actually a one-way road. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so a typical collection will start actually about 10:30, between 10:30 to 11 o'clock. But the staff will actually need to step away from their current vocations already and to actually drive the buggy, collect the buggy, drive the buggy, and then park it near the kitchen, and then you will start queuing. So, on the right hand side, you will see actually the picture illustrations for different team members coming in. So they will actually bring their own bags, then they will also bring a name list. Because typically for lunch, the staff who are actually on duty for the next day will actually need to place their order to say that, whether I'm having lunch or not into the system. So from there, the team representative who is actually collecting the lunch will print out that nominal roll together with the lunch preferences, and then they will go down to the cookhouse to collect. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so of course, some colleagues, depending on the number of portions that you're collecting, some will come with their own bags. Some will just carry in hand. And we do see that the collection, it could range from between 3 boxes to even say 15, 20 boxes, depending on how big is your group size. And of course, as I mentioned just now, there's also fruits along the way. So in the road area itself, you will also have wildlife encounters such as peacock and so on, as well as probably monitored lizards along the way that you need to drive and be careful of, assuming that you're operating a normal buggy. Okay, moving on next. Okay, so after you collect the box of meal, then you need to, of course, carry, and then from there on, you actually walk from the kitchen to the buggy after collection. Next picture, you see on the right that, you need to stack it properly to make sure that it doesn't fall before you drive off. Okay, moving on next. So if you are rostered on the day whereby there's fruits, and depending, if you are not having a bag with you, of course, the fruits either goes into the pocket or actually, goes into the front of the car. Then for the day which I actually took the picture and followed the routes, then it starts to rain. So as it starts to rain, because the buggy is not fully covered, so depending on the level of rain that you actually have, then you will need to actually both reverse your buggy carefully because it's a one-way road, remember, and also need to protect your fruit from actually getting wet, and you also need to prevent the fruits and fruits from actually rolling down into the roads. Okay, moving on. Yep. So as you drive along, you will through the back of house road, you will see the first picture. You need to actually stop for heavy vehicles because our port is still under heavy construction. Okay, second picture, you will see that there is actually a barrier and a gantry, something like EIP gantry. That's actually a demarcation of the front and back of house border areas. And then as you drive onto the public roads, whereby we mentioned as just now, front of house, you will actually need to stop for children, for parents with their young kids who may be running around. And you also need to stop for pram, and as well as even our own in-park trams, you need to stop for those. Okay, moving on. Okay, so once you reach your first point, depending on where is the accessibility route of that tram, you need to walk. So depending on the staff, they may bring an umbrella or they may not, then they will need to walk to the retail shop to actually drop off. So in this case that we are actually showing the example, we are dropping off about 3 boxes. Okay, moving on to the next page. So after that, then you, of course, typically manual route, you just walk back to your buggy points, and then before reaching to the next few stops, you can actually, the staff who is on duty will actually start to call or SMS or even send WhatsApp messages to the rest of the colleagues to say that, our lunch is coming in the next 15 minutes or so, please stand by to collect. Okay, that's already 12 o'clock. Okay, so from now on, we actually drive to the various back of house areas for the staff to actually collect their meals. So on that day itself, as I mentioned, it was raining, so the staff did not collect an umbrella. Then they were actually need to collect the meals. So after all the delivery is done, we will then need to drive back and return the buggy after delivery. Okay, moving on to the next page, please. Okay, the quick summary of the problem statement is that, first of all, how might we actually provide a better staff welfare? First of all, being that the meals that we serve, because remember that the kitchen already start preparing it probably about 11 o'clock, then by the time it reaches the staff, is between 12 to 1. So that is actually a time whereby sometimes the food actually gets cold. And in times of rain, the food may get soggy because of rain conditions and so on. So we are actually looking for a possible mechanism and a method to provide warm meals for our staff, and to reduce the need for actually a staff to be on roster, so that they can actually also have meaningful rest time during lunch hour. Okay, next point. How might we optimize? Sorry. Back to the previous page. Okay, point number 2. How might we optimize the number of staff and vehicle required for the staff meal delivery? Okay, as I mentioned just now, in a typical lunchtime, you will see about 20 different buggies from the various teams actually being driven into the cookhouse area for collection. There could be more. And each of the buggy is actually an electric vehicle, as I mentioned just now. Some will carry more load, some will carry less. Some of it, when I say less, it could be, as I mentioned, just 3 boxes. Then for the one that is carrying more, they will actually carry like maybe say 12 to 15 boxes. And along the route, there is actually a likelihood that they may be traveling quite the same path, except when it comes to certain distribution points whereby they actually split and then go along. So we are trying to see whether through the use of AI and data can we actually optimize that route. Think of it as, for those of you who are AI trained, traveling salesman problem. Okay. Point number 3. How might we pilot the use of autonomous vehicles or other technology for staff meal delivery and beyond? Okay, in the current context and example that I have given, it's actually a very simple use case for the POC and as well as the open innovation platform we are talking about staff meals. Think a little bit further, as we start to open up the parks with new locations, we are actually looking at the ability to actually scale to say that, even for guest meals delivery, even for animal food, and even for moving of merchandises in between the various areas of the parks. Okay, that's how it can potentially scale up. Point number 4, how can we replace the buggies with smaller vehicles, which are actually safer and more energy efficient? So as I mentioned in my earlier point just now, having 20 buggies being driven around in a very suboptimal condition, each one carrying just a small little amount of food packages is not the best way to use our buggy resources. And definitely because of the fact that the buggies are actually being electronically driven, is also not a very good way to use energy in that case. So we are also, as a organization that actually embrace sustainability, we are therefore trying to see how we can actually improve upon this area by having consolidation of the meals and deliver them in a very optimal way. Okay, point number 5, we will also want to be able to test out how do we communicate in real time between the various vehicles to travel in an efficient and optimized route. Okay, moving on to the next page. Okay, so what are we hoping to validate through the OIP? Is that, first of all, human-centered design. is it something that our staff want, or do they still prefer to drive a buggy or even ride bicycle to actually collect their meals? I think during normal days, I think it's still okay, but when the weather gets a little bit too hot, not fair for the staff to walk too long. And actually, when it comes to also rainy weather, I think there is certain discomfort in terms of that. Okay, so looking at the point under human-centered design, point number 2, we will also want to assess what is technically and organizationally feasible, and in terms of how do we actually scale up. Okay, and point 3, is it commercially viable in terms of what is the cost per meal if we actually average out from a ROI perspective. Okay. Next one, we are looking at environmental and social. Okay, environmental and social here means that because of the fact that the vehicles currently travel through one-way road that covers both front of house and back of house, you will come into interaction with people, means young children, elderly, parents, kids, as well as other guests. That's one way that we actually need to look at from a safety perspective. Not only that, because of our unique landscape, we actually have got roads that is actually having different gradients, and along the roads you will actually have got different animals. You can actually have peacock standing in the middle of the road, not wanting to move, but then you can't shoo them away. And there's also things such as monitor lizards that is lying in the middle of the road while you're actually driving a vehicle, so you need to still wait for them to actually cross. Okay. The addition to that, because we are actually a wildlife precinct, there is also likelihood of macaques, or to put it in layman term, monkeys, not actually owned by us, but these are actually wild ones that may actually come to prey on your food. It means, for example, if you leave a food packet there, or if they smell food, they will come and attack the buggy. So these are things that we will try to say that from our environment, how do we have a possible and robust solution that actually caters for this? And in terms of the solutioning, technical aspects, what are we trying to address from OIP? Are we looking for a semi or fully autonomous vehicle? What's the payload? Optimum payload per trip up? Is it 10 boxes, 5 boxes, 20 boxes, or even 50 boxes, and so on? What's the energy efficiency of it? What's the optimal speed and path routing that we can look at? How maintainable is it? Next point, network connectivity. Because our park is actually in a very heavily vegetated area, we want to know whether a inbuilt kind of 4G communication is good enough or not, or do we need to have the autonomous vehicle itself to actually have got additional data and GPS routing capabilities? Because 5G has not come into Mandai yet. That's something we are still exploring, but at the point in time, we want to see whatever is available and feasible. Okay, next thing is that accuracy of the various sensors that you have. So how do we actually have accurate sensing to say that, if the autonomous vehicles actually gets attacked by a monkey, then how do we actually go back and rescue it? Or if you get lost, drop inside the drain or whatever, how do we then bring it back in terms of accuracy? Or if the autonomous vehicles actually knock into something or knock into somebody, then how do we actually then have the recovery mechanism to actually bring it back? Okay, last one, point of communication is that how does the autonomous vehicle then actually inform the staff that your meal is coming, that you can actually go and pick it up? Okay, moving on, next page. Okay, so for this particular statement, we are actually offering a cash price of $20,000. The other incentive that you're actually being able to be exposed of as part of our problem statement is that we are actually exploring for long-term partnerships. The current case study that we have is actually only for Singapore Zoo, but in the future, we will have close to about 6 parks and as well as eco resorts. So the possibilities is actually endless. Access to resource. What we mean by resource here is the stuff, the environment, and as well as the very interesting landscape that we have that it's not very common in a lot of places, whereby you are able to have autonomous vehicle to operate in a vegetated area together with a wildlife environment that actually allows you to have that kind of scaling. And because of the fact that we are actually operating the private road, there are some leeway in terms of SLA regulations towards the running of autonomous vehicles. Okay, next thing is, of course, expertise with regards to how do we then actually bring you on board to partner with us, and as well as our various colleagues who are actually experts in their own various trades. Okay, so last page. Okay, evaluation criteria is that we are actually going to have a little bit more of understanding about your company profile, the solution fit, as well as the solution readiness in terms of how mature is it, and the ability to scale. And of course, we are actually also going to look at the quality of the innovation and as well as the solution that advantage that you have. Of course, proven track records will definitely be a great advantage if you're actually going to bring in something like that. Okay, I think we have questions for Ming.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep, that's all I
Vincent,
have.
you're done already. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes,
What
yes,
an
yes.
exciting presentation. So you're looking for something very high-tech, AI optimized, autonomous solution that is also monkey-proof, right? If I get you
Not
correct.
only
Okay.
monkey-proof. Not only monkey-proof.
Okay.
Monkey is not the only wildlife
Okay.
that we have.
Okay.
You need to do with peacock. You need to
Monitor
do
lizards and peacock. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. A lot of different things.
Okay, very challenging problem. Okay, we have a couple of questions for you, but I'm just going to take only, I think, one or two because we want to also allow you to actually key in the answers to some of the more basic questions. So maybe this one from Amanda Sim it sounds quite interesting for all the audience. What is the budget you have after the prototype stage? Are you able to share on this, Munsun?
Okay. After the prototype stage, it depends on what's the kind of scale that we want. You could say that you scale. For example, the budget. For example, currently in OIP, we said $20,000 is just to probably let us try out the solution. It could be a leasing model, it could be a partnership model for 1 to 2 months, for instance. So that's why I mentioned just some of ROI. So for instance, if $20,000 just for the OIP price, and they tell us that it's going to be for 2 months rental, then my average cost per month is 10K. Correct? Works out to be about $500. Then of course the stakeholders will ask, wouldn't it be cheaper if I go and hire a driver, go and drive every meal around? I mean, it's a very realistic question. What's the cost per meal? That's a very simple fundamental. Okay, when you talk about budget, then to scale forward, then it depends on beyond staff meal delivery. What can we do for? Are we able to deliver food for elephant? Are we able to deliver food for rhinoceros and so on? Because it is a different payload in terms of what the vehicle is able to carry. Your routing path is very different, and actually your ROI is actually also different already. So beyond that, therefore, depending on the case study, if we can also make it autonomous food delivery system for our guests. So for example, they're attending the animal show, but they want to have something. It could be an ice cream, depending on how robust the solution is from the gift shop or whatever, or some special meals, or even a birthday cake for a birthday celebration.
Okay.
Something that really depending on what's the use case that we potentially going to see. But for budget wise, I think there is a certain budget, but I can't review. But it depends on the suitability of the solution. Then we can actually work together and co-create and co-innovate. Thanks.
Okay, and it'll be a collaboration between you and the eventual winner of this challenge. So I think it's a lot of possibilities there. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for our challenge from Mandai Wildlife Group. A big thank you to Mr. Lam Boon-Sun, the AVP of Transformation. Thank you, Boon-Sun. Hope to see you again soon. And all the best for this challenge. I'm pretty sure you attract a lot of very cool solutions for this. So you're going to have a tough time probably choosing the best ones. Okay, thank you very much. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.